Well, thanks everybody for joining us. We'll go ahead and get started with some introductions, and some more might be joining us in a few minutes. So we'll just move on with the show. But I appreciate everybody joining us today for this special NCLUG presentation for NCDOT Open Roads or OpenX Rollout Week. OpenX, of course, refers to the Bentley Connection Edition brands. And NC is proud to partner with the NC Department of Transportation to bring you these unit updates. This session webinar will be on Open Rail with Brian Gackstetter. But before we get started, I'm gonna just go over some housekeeping rules. And this is a webinar presentation, so we're gonna mute all attendees. But at any time, if you have a question, you can submit it in the chat box, and I'll field those questions with Brian, but then we'll have a Q&A at the end of the session that we can take more questions. But at any time, feel free to go ahead and put that in the chat box. We will be recording the webinar and posting those links up on the NCLUG website after the event. I think currently we have them all up there except for the geotech, which was earlier at lunch, and then this one hopefully we'll have up by the end of the day, and then the rest for the rest of the week. We are offering PDH credits to those who've registered on the website for the event, and we'll be sending those probably out in the next couple weeks, the PDH credits for these. But now I'll go ahead and hand it over to our presenter today, Brian Gackstetter with NCDOT, to discuss some open rail. Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome, Patty. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brian Gackstetter. I'm a senior project engineer in the rail division, engineering coordination unit underneath the engineering and safety branch, or engineering coordination and safety branch. I'll be presenting this today as facilitator, and then representing the department, I have Jeff Garland, Wasim, and then Brad Smythe, who's the rail design, he's not rail design engineer, he's actually rail design manager. And then Ethan Schwartz, who's our Bentley ORD advisor. So our outreach began last fall when our rail design group reached out to Norfolk Southern and CSX on their plans for switching out from microstation based on Bentley's decision to discontinue the microstation V8, SS2, SS4. Based on those conversations at this time, they plan on using Open Roads Designer. At this time, we also began some internal training and project testing in Open Roads. We selected a small internal project down in Wilmington to use as our internal test project. Our outreach also included coordination with our rail design private engineering firms as well. We reached out to HDR, STV, Crouch, and NTB to gauge their input on the software and also solicit their input on how to improve the rail workspace. We received some valuable input from them firms, and that will be discussed later in this presentation. Rail projects are unique in that Class 1 railroads have the say in whether or not to design any portion of their project on their corridor. The rail division will ask the railroad if they want to pursue the design themselves or have NCDOT perform any portion of the design. In most cases, all the design work for the track component of a project will be completed by CSX or NS using either their consulting firms or their in-house engineering staff. There are some instances where NCDOT provided the roadbed and drainage plans, but NCDOT did not complete any of the track design itself. As we further tested Open Roads, we took in consideration that roadway design is a major component of our projects, as a majority of our funded projects are grade separations of the railroad. Of our funded projects, only a handful of them are strictly track projects. Also, of these grade separations, most of them are highway over rail, which lessens the impacts to the railroad. As the rail division continues to get projects identified in the STIP through the prioritization process, we have made our best attempts to follow practices and procedures that roadway design unit has established. This includes working relationships with other central technical units as well within the department. Rail Division has 3 units: engineering coordination, rail design, and rail signals that perform engineering-related designs using MicroStation. Now, we have other units, but those units use AutoCAD, and so they don't use the MicroStation platforms. A majority of our STIP projects are also PEF designed, just because of our limitations. As a part of our outreach, we received some valuable information from one of our PF firms. The information on this slide and the next slide is what they provided us to share with this group. Running Open Roads, Open Rail on a server provided some problematic with long times and crashing. They found an effective solution for at least their group is to use ProjectWise synced with their local computers. Using this method, they dramatically reduced lag time and crashing. They saw significant plan prep issues in the release of the 2020 releases of Open Rail, specifically with annotation defaults. But we've heard that Open Roads 2021 release 1 will fix some of those issues. So they are hopeful that this will also fix some of the issues in Open Rail. As work around the consultants resorted to dropping annotations to a text file for traditional MicroStation manipulation. The new geometry tools took a week or 2 getting used to, but once you're familiar with them, they were intuitive. They also found that it was strange to design the profile in the alignment file. They can't see the profile annotation until you cut the sheets. As a workaround, what they did is they created a profile grid so you can see the profile with the annotations. The Cant tools, the rail version of roadway super elevation, seems to require a lot of hand modification so far as well. The modeling is very similar to Geopack V8i for corridor modeling in Open Rail. The software handles long alignments well, but they recommend shortening corridor models to less than 1 mile in length and separate files per model when possible. The initial testing of longer corridors, 3+ miles, worked okay, but those models got more complex with multiple template drops, point controls, constraints, etc., and the processing speed deteriorates. They found that the 1 mile is a good rule of thumb max on a rail corridor. So the next thing is our workspace. So our workspace development is currently ongoing, is underway. We performed a comprehensive review of our cell library, and we're looking to modernize our workspace to meet the needs of ORD. This currently includes the conversion of any cells from SS2 to ORD. We believe that the number of cells will be reduced as some will be found in the roadway workspace. So we were trying to look at limiting duplications. We found that some of the cells that we have are in other DOT standard cell libraries. So we are going to do a lot of elimination and consolidation of our workspace. And also, based on our conversations with some of the PF partners, we are going to develop a few roadway standard templates to use in ORD. That was something that when we did our outreach, they found that it would be helpful to have just some standard templates, not everything that we would do, but just some standard ones that would allow the firms to easily work in ORD. So coming up in the future, the Rail Division plans to keep seeking out training opportunities for open roads and especially rail. I will say that we do have an RFP currently out for advertisement that will use ORD for tip numbers P5731 and P5732, which are as a station project and a roadway project in the city of Lexington. We are also potentially going to use ORD on P5713, which is a grade separation project highway over rail in Greensboro. All these projects were affected by the cash crunch back last year, and they're just starting their preliminary engineering, design, environmental processes, or beginning 30% plan development, which makes them good test candidates to use Open Roads Designer. In the meantime, we do have a PF firm that is going to use Open Rail on a project down in Charlotte called the Charlotte Locomotive and Railcar Facility. Now, that project is strictly a track project. There's no grade separations, no roadway work to be done with that. So the firm is going to test Open Rail on that one, and we'll be kept in the loop as how that goes in the future. So at this time, it is our intentions to use Open Roads due to the compatibility issues that we have found using Open Rail and Open Roads, since the majority of our projects are roadway design projects, involve roadway design. There's compatibility issues. There's between the two softwares. It would make it pretty hard for a lot of cumbersome issues to use Open Rail for a rail division project. Not necessarily to say that we can't use it for a track only project, but it's our intent right now that we can make do with Open Roads. So we'll continue to evaluate Open Road or Open Rail as we transition to ORD, and especially as it relates to the Charlotte locomotive and railcar facility. So that is the end of the presentation. I'll turn it over to Jeff to run over this slide that you've all seen in previous presentations.
No, thank you for that, Brian. And again, we just put this slide up on each one just to stress the fact that we are trying to figure out as best we can with our internal resources and the folks we have, but certainly from an external standpoint, we're trying to figure out the best way to approach the folks in the industry that have any insight, knowledge that can collaborate with us, because this is all new. And so we're trying to figure it out. So for the folks on the call, just trying to stress that. And there is a website on this slide where we're trying to post the current plans and where we're at, and any things that we are able to share with the industry. But then if you fast forward a slide or two forward, Brian, really it's just the email addresses, et cetera. We're just here to, there's two email addresses. One is the general one that we certainly monitor, and then here's my personal email address as well. Just looking to get any input, questions that you may have. But Brian, I'm just going to pause and say thank you. I know that certainly you and the team have done a lot of work in trying to figure out what are the next steps and how do we as an industry move towards this. Obviously, Bentley is going to discontinue their software at some point. The older MicroStation SS2, SS4. That we've also obviously got licensing for it for a while, but as we move on to the modern Connect platform, what is the right mix of using Open Roads Designer or Open Rail for our current work for the department and for our firms that do this work? So thank you for the work that you've done so far and for the work that we do have going forward. But I'll just pause there, just looking for any collaborative conversation that we can have. We certainly welcome any input. And if it's not today, certainly we'll have a wrap-up session Friday at noon as well. But I'll pause there. But again, thank you, Brian.
You're welcome, Jeff. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So if anybody, attendees, have a question, feel free to type that in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and I can call on you if you'd like to ask your question. Brian, we appreciate that overview.
You're welcome.
And Gary, I see the chat and stuff. You said the email doesn't work. It says deliverable. Interesting. I have to try that out. It should be working. If not, then I will contact our IT people immediately. That should be the address.
Make sure I didn't put a typo in there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's supposed to be undeliverable.
Sure. Well, if that should be the correct address. If there is something going on, I'll contact our IT folks right now. But I know my personal email works. Fire it there if you want to. We'll get it to where it needs to be.
Okay, yeah, that's the reason I emailed you earlier, because
Yep.
that one did not work. It
Okay.
just says undeliverable. That's why I sent it to you a while ago.
Thank you, Gary. Yep, I will. I'm gonna follow with our IT folks because that should be working. But let me figure out what's going on with that. Thank you.
All right, I think we have a question or two. Have you completed any rail plans in ORD that are available as samples?
No, Elizabeth, we have not completed any plans in ORD at this point. We've done some testing in it as far as just roadway alignments and things like that, but we haven't really got into the whole side of the track side of things as far as rail is concerned at this point.
I know, Brian, you might not have gotten into some of this, but are you going to follow a lot of the like roadway standard guidelines for like plan sheets and some things of that nature,
And
utilizing their stuff?
that's exactly correct, and that's kind of why our presentation is as small as it is. We rely, we've pretty much followed roadway design as the main lead when we do our projects. So plain sheet wise, a lot of that will follow what the department already has established as it relates to plan development.
And I see a question here from Oak that says, any new templates for rail? I know you had mentioned that.
We don't have them yet. We're working on them.
Yeah.
So that will be part of our workspace when we get that pushed out.
And I know in some of the other sessions that we've had, I mean, DOT is also looking for, if consultants have things that they've designed, I think you would be interested in seeing what some other people have done and designed to maybe utilize.
Yes, and that's what we've reached out to. We've talked to, when we've come up with these templates and ideas, it's been working with our PF partners who are on our LSA contracts that we use for our plans. And it's based on the feedback that they would like to see, that they would think that would be helpful, is how we've kind of developed this going forward.
Lisa Moon asked, will planometrics also be done in open platform?
And unfortunately, the answer is yes. And that's the thing that we didn't, that we touch on, is that our staff is really limited in-house staff. We don't have a big staff of engineers and technicians that work for us. So everything that we do is pretty much pushed out to the engineering consultants. And anything that we do in-house are pretty simplistic designs, and those don't require a whole lot of intense usage of current microstation geopack, the software itself. What we do, I mean, internally. Yeah. Now, obviously, a great separation will, we'll use those to the fullest extent, but in-house staff is pretty limited.
And I'll just say too that if I know a lot of you might have been in some of the previous sessions or planning to be in some of the future ones, but if you didn't, if you're just joining this because you're just doing strictly rail or something like that, that you probably want to go back and review some of those other sessions, because there's some good information.
Yes, yes, that's correct. Yep. We rail division itself basically will follow roadway as the lead, and then we will lean on to other disciplines, structures, geotech, sign delineation, signals, hydraulic structures, all those units and what they've already established, we will follow accordingly based on what it is that's being done.
Will you be updating any guidelines? Like, I know some of the other units are going to be creating some like quick tutorial videos or some new, a lot of them are going through some of their current guidelines, like the roadway design manual and some other things like that.
We really don't have a whole lot, honestly, because like I said, we lean on other areas of the department. if is something that we do have that needs to be updated, we'll look into it and see what we have. But as of right now, I'm not aware of anything that we are going to have to update.
Anybody else have some questions?
Yes, so Brian and Lisa asked about the planimetrics, and just want to make the users aware. I mean, even though this is a 3D software, and Brian, you could correct me if I'm wrong. I'm talking from roadway perspective. Even though these roadway structures, other units perspective, even though it's a 3D program, the planimetrics is 2D aspect of the software is same as the microstation aspect. So in that realm, nothing has changed other than the ribbon looks a little bit different. So it is a little overwhelming in looking at the new software. If you guys are only focused in the rail side of things, but from a microstation perspective, this is the same software. It's just that it has the 3D capabilities now. So if you are still doing the 2D side of things, things can change. It's still the same design stuff, but again, the workspace has changed a little bit. It's more geared towards that 3D environment. So I think once users get used to the whole new look, the new workspace, it'll all flow even.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct.
And I think it was mentioned in some previous webinars that, of course, Bentley has a ton of training stuff on their website too. If talking about it is a different interface, and they have a bunch of different videos and webinars that you can go and look and get some more training. But Brian, according to what you've said, you're going to stick with open roads and not do open rail for now. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, we
Yeah.
are definitely. Yes. Ethan posted in the chat, learn.bentley.com. Yes, there are a bunch of things up there. But yes, we are going to use open roads based at this point. We don't foresee the need to learn or to use open rail for our projects based on the majority roadway component that all these projects have. There's only a handful of ones that are strictly track projects, but most of the ones that we have they have a roadway component to it, and its majority is roadway.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? We appreciate the update.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I guess there's at least one other software people don't have to try to go learn, because I know there are some compatibility issues we got Open Bridge Modeler and things like that to try to work within too.
Yeah, I sat on the structures one, and I heard of that this morning with the compatibility issues that they were having. So it kind of makes sense. We can do what we need to do in open roads, and I think that's the only thing at the end of the day. That's the only thing that matters.
Did you mention when you were officially, like, what projects were going to start?
Yeah, that was, so we have an RFP out. If we go back to the presentation, we are going to, we have an RFP out right now for P5731 and P5732. It'll be ultimately a combined project in Lexington. So that project will be designed in ORD, and then I've reached out to the consultant on P5713 to do that in ORD as well.
Yep. And then anything going forward?
And everything going forward, yeah.
Okay, but you're not going to retro like a certain percentage and have them go back and redo them?
I will say it's fortunate at the point that we are where we're at in our projects. We have projects that are literally ready for let or at 100% designs and ready for let. And then we have projects that are getting ready to get started. So we're fortunate enough that we don't have to worry about transitioning existing projects and new projects. So it kind of works out well for us. We've just gotten lucky, I guess, is to say.
And will DOT be defining, I know with the ORD, things have a lot more features to them that kind of go along with the estimating. And so I would imagine that in rail, there's some other pay items that aren't necessarily in roadway. Will you be working on those too to get those incorporated?
If we get, yeah, we probably will. That might be a question for Brad, but I think at this point, all the pay items that we normally use, we have pay items already for. And if it was being designed by Norfolk Southern or CSX, we have a different avenue of how that is contracted. So that doesn't necessarily be, those aren't central let. Those are handled a different way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of tag on that. Since most of our projects, at least out of our office, are turnkey, we will have to figure out if there are pay items that don't get captured using open roads on it for a design of a project. Pay items don't get captured using the existing features that calculate those. Then we'll need to look at ways to either supplement that or calculate it some other way.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? I see Oak made a comment that the open rail is supposedly more powerful than open roads. I'm sure it's got some more functionalities.
Based on the feedback that we've gotten, yeah, we agreed with that. But just as they have other, issues with long alignments, they're running into the same thing with open rail. So, and the problem, I guess, the thing is, at the end of the day, we don't actually design any track itself. Mm-hmm. If we do anything on the railroad, the most we would ever do would be the roadbed designs. So that's ballast down. Everything ballast up would be designed by the railroad.
Well, and so there are some examples of projects where we've got undergrade grade separations, and the department's project does design detour tracks and permanent tracks that need to be built as part of that. And the exercise to do that will be thoroughly coordinated with the owning railroads, because we do get into issues of different contract mechanisms for different components. So plan sheets, borders could be different within a single project design. So it's just one of the nuances of rail projects that do have a track function, and there's not a way that we do it every time. So they're different, and we'll just we'll get to those as the opportunities present. But like Brian said, the project in Lexington is the first RFP that we've issued mandating the use of Open Roads Designer. And then upcoming projects that we task out will likely also mandate that. Though there may be some instances where the nuance of a individual project allows some flexibility to either be done in open roads or open rail, and we'll defer to, in general, to the consultant's recommendation, and also the criteria within the project that is defined by the host railroad. So there's not a simple answer to that, because for every one of them, there's just sort of their individual responses to individual projects.
Great. Okay. We do appreciate everybody taking their time to join us today, and for Brian and DOT to put together and be part of this. If there's no other questions, then appreciate it. I guess tomorrow we have another group of sessions with hydro, utilities, and erosion control at 9 a.m. And then we have location and surveys at noon, and then a presentation with EAU at 3 tomorrow. So if you didn't sign up for those, it's not too late. You can still go to our website, NCLUG website, and sign up for those. And of course, on Friday, Jeff will be doing another session at noon where we're going to come back and just answer any questions, especially after you've seen some of these other presentations. And there's probably a lot of questions about it, how it all works together. So again, you can send any questions that you have to that email, and be sure to sign up and join us on Friday at noon for that session.
That's it. And thank you, Patty. And for me, apologies for the typo. Yep, there's missing an I in that initiative. So that was the challenge. So we'll be sure to fix that on the other slides. So
yep.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Patty.
Thanks, Patty. Thank you, everyone. Great job, Brian.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, Patty. Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome.
Thanks all. See you later.